So tell me, where did you study to become a social worker?
Yeah, I was the very first graduating class at Deakin University in Geelong, and that was, I think, at once a wonderful thing, but also a very scary thing. So this was a brand new course that the university was undertaking, and so I think, our teachers and tutors were very passionate and, we benefited enormously from that. But there was also, as you can imagine, with anything that was a bit new, there was a lot of things that were not really quite settled. But I think that first graduating class, we really stuck together, and it was quite a small graduating class.
Oh,
and
that's lovely.
it was a really wonderful experience. And, in particular, I remember having a very close relationship with one of my tutors who was also a manager at a large community health service in Melbourne. And she actually encouraged me that if I wanted to work with young people, I really needed to get into the thick of it. And she gave me a placement offer where she worked, and I ended up not only doing a placement there, but actually after completing that, being offered a role there. And I stayed there for nearly 10 years. And so I think about her. She has unfortunately since passed away, and I remember feeling the loss of her passing very significantly, because she felt like such a significant teacher in my life.
So you basically, you hit it out of the park. So you finished university, you got a place, and you stayed there for 10 years. That's almost unheard of in the social work realm. We tend to move around until we find our posse.
Yeah, I very much appreciate that I was very lucky. Yeah. I was also very driven and still am. And
yes.
I think that I just managed to find a small family in that community health service, because I grew up on a farm in a rural country area, went to a very small high school, and then when I was studying at Deakin, I lived on campus there. And so when I moved to Melbourne to work in this very low socioeconomic area, I didn't actually live there. I sort of trained it in from a much more comfortable, nice suburb, living with a couple of girlfriends. But it was an area that was rife with drugs and prostitution and gangs and a lot of, domestic violence. And they were a very tight-knit group, and there were a lot of young people that lived in that local area. And so the youth team at the community health service was very large. And because the work was so intense, it was a very tight-knit family. And I think I really found my feet and found my family there, and I just was so passionate about the work and got along with everyone so well that it remained something that just felt so comfortable and so right for such a long time.
That's amazing. You know what I love? I love that you said I didn't live there and you were happy to train it in from a more comfortable suburb. That was really interesting for me as a social worker as well, because I did the same thing. I didn't live in the area that I worked in for a number of different reasons, but I might be misquoting it, but there's a beautiful adage that says you can't make changes from the same consciousness that created them. And it was one of the reasons I decided to leave social work in the end, only because I worked for a charity at the time. And so legally they could pay me charity award rates, which was not a lot of money.
No.
And I found that the people that were on my program qualified to be on my program primarily because they were the recipients of government welfare assistance. And I remember thinking, doing the numbers and thinking, I'm earning just a little bit more. And so a lot of the time, when we build rapport, we were lamenting the same sort of thing, like the electricity bill or the rent, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought, God, I'm in exactly the same state. And I have empathy, but I don't feel like I'm facilitating change. So it was, anyway, it was one of the catalysts that inspired me to get out at the time.
Sure. Yeah, and I can really understand that. Although I must admit that I think that partially, or in fact significantly, my reason for not wanting to live in the local area was that I just didn't want to run into clients at the supermarket. To be perfectly frank, you know, on a Saturday morning when I was picking up my fresh fruit and veg and I might have been in my yoga pants or just looking slightly disheveled or, you know, I thought to myself, I need space.
Oh,
and,
yes.
You know, so I think it was a practical thing for me as well as like, you know, I can do some really good things here, but I don't need to live here in this community for that.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, I learned that lesson years later when I became a yoga teacher, and I'd run into my students at the supermarket and they would look into my trolley to see what I'd be buying. Or I'd be on a date and they'd be there with their family pointing and saying, you know,
that's my yoga teacher.
Yeah, or coming up to me, you know, and saying, don't mean to be rude, but what was that track you played during Shavasana? It's like, I'm about to drink some red wine. This is so not the space that I'm in right now.
Yes, I understand.